What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Letting the Dust Settle. And listen, guys, I know it's been some time since I posted my last political video, and a lot of my videos have been more on the religious side, and really have been appreciating all of the love and hate I've been getting. And I know I'm going to get a lot more because I have two big debates coming out here soon. And I think even one of the debates is going to have a part two, even a part three. So stay tuned for that. But I just noticed that it's been like 11 or 12 days since I posted a long form video on this channel. I've been filling in the gaps with some shorts because the the political scene has been a little slow recently, but then out of nowhere this week, it's just been really heating up. And I just was like, I didn't know what video I wanted to put, but I was like, let's just kind of just do an overall summary of what's going on geopolitically speaking. And then I'm going to give my analysis of what my opinion is of what Trump's geopolitical strategy is, especially with the coming like midterm elections. And so, first of all, let's look at like the what are the big storylines here. We have the ceasefire right in Gaza. We have the peace deal, the impending peace deal from what it looks like in Ukraine. We have things going on with potential like air raids now, like not air raids, but we're gonna have potentially like a no-fly zone in Venezuela due to the drug trafficking that is happening there as well. And then we also have what's like the big meeting that we had with Saudi Arabia. And so, let's just kind of go with the big ones first. And just the smaller stories, I mean small stories, and let's just get them out of the way. So and we knew this, right? If you watch any of my videos, you would know that everyone knew this was gonna happen. But so far, since the peace deal that's happened in Gaza, the ceasefire, we've already seen one big bombing where it saw many casualties, and I think over 50 people died, as well as just the other day, I think maybe even yesterday, we saw two civilians, Palestinians, that surrendered to the IDF, and they both got murdered in cold blood, which is a totally like war violation of international law. And the issue is that our country is fully backing a rogue colonial state of Israel. And this is what's going to happen. We knew going into the ceasefire, that this was not going to be the end all be all. This is just the beginning. This is we know we already. I mean, you can Google it, right? You can find that Israel has a greater Israel plan, and they're going to be continuing to colonize not only just the land of Palestine, but potentially even land in Jordan, Saudi. It's going to be a big mess, and it's just beginning. And because of that, I would be highly surprised if we never see any American boots on the ground. As we can even know, just from 2001, right? Our GDP has gone up 555%. It went from around 6 trillion to around 38 million. And total loss of life has been around 10,000 Americans versus 4 to 5 million people in the Middle East. And who has been the benefit? Who's been the one receiving all the benefits from this tragedy, from all these wars, from all this loss of life and economic sanctions, right? It's the Zionist state of Israel, and this is truly only the beginning. And this is what we get when APAC is so entrenched and entangled with our American politics and our politicians. And so, unfortunately, this situation is far from over. And I don't know what the clear end in sight is, right? To flatten it, to then rebuild Gaza, to potentially even build the third temple in Israel, and maybe even a Trump Tower. I mean, and that's probably the third temple, funny enough. So we're obviously going to stay very locked into what is happening there. But again, this is like nothing new for everyone. Just everyone just put their thoughts and prayers into what is happening in Palestine. It's obviously a tragedy. It's a genocide. It is a famine, and hopefully there can be some relief or some silver lining at the end of this. But this is just the beginning. The next big story coming out of the Middle East was President Donald Trump hosting the Saudi Crown Prince at the White House, and them announcing a $1 trillion investment deal into the United States. That's going to be covering different investments like military and jets, as well as artificial intelligence, which is absolutely huge. It's huge because we're going to be this is one. Saudi is a very rich, powerful country in the Middle East, as well as oil rich country, which is super important to note for the rest of the stories coming up here, as well as this is also going to be a stepping stone for strengthening their entry into the Abraham Accords, which is this Middle Eastern peace deal with all the different Arab nations and Israel. And this was signed at the end of President Donald Trump's previous term, which was like huge. But ultimately, this seems like a pretext for business, right? A pretext for all of these, crony capitalistic entities, these crony capitalistic states, trying to form some level of like regional partnership just for more, business and colonialism, in my opinion. And that's what it seems to look like that way so far. And but at the same time, this is a massive economic win for Trump because he's really corralling many different states, many different nations in order to then, have a higher surplus when it comes to the budget deficit. And so and it's coming in all at a very peculiar time with the midterm elections coming up next year, which we'll get into. But this is, in my opinion, economically speaking, Saudi seems like we can talk about them politically and also with their indentured servants as well. They're modern day slaves, right? But in terms of economic partnership, this could be pretty big. This could hopefully create some level of stability in the region by bringing in Saudi and Israel. Even though we don't, we it's common knowledge that those two states tend to be more of those like mafia level type crony capitalist boss type states, and so this is going to be something interesting to look at as a whole. As of right now, we can be. I think it's cause for excitement when a country like Saudi Arabia wants to invest because they're going to want to invest a lot. And so I think economically speaking, we can expect some short term wins, but long term speaking, I'm concerned for the civilians of those two states, as well as what is the true outcome of the Abraham Accords? Like what is it going to solve, and will it create actual peace, or is this going to be another way to strengthen, Israel and Saudi, make them two superpowers in the region while also causing even more chaos, damage, and wars to the other states? And so, but as a whole, we can see this as a short-term victory for Donald Trump on the economic factor for helping, boost the American economy. The next big story is going down under, not to Australia, but to Venezuela. So there has been, I think even since maybe the beginning of this year, maybe I'm getting my timelines a little mixed up, but Trump has been harping on Venezuela for as long as he's been in office, this term at least. And there's been a lot of reasons why. He's been blaming them for drug trafficking. He's been blaming them for coming in through land, through sea mostly. And he's been really been calling them like narco terrorists. And as honorable and modest and hopeful as that sounds, where like Trump is defending the honor of American drug addicts, which, hey, I mean, if you live in these little cities, you might know a few, right? But the issue is that that's obviously not the case. This is a pretext for a couple of things. The first being is that the Venezuelan president is known that he did steal the election, and he's not a favorable candidate in the U.S. eyes. And so first things first is that they want to replace him with the more favorable candidate, who I think has been, hiding out in Spain. And so that is what this is about. And so far, what it seems like through Trump's efforts of some military strategy, there's been no the boats that have been coming into to Venezuela have been stopped, as well as now they're going to do a no-fly zone potentially to then like stop all commercial flights coming out of Venezuela. And now, what the true matter of this is that one, the cocaine is not even produced in Venezuela. It's actually produced in Colombia and it goes through Mexico. Sometimes it does go through Venezuela, but it's not even the biggest enemy when it comes to the narco drug trafficking. So that is first of all. If and then second of all, if Trump really cared about the cocaine issue, it's been reported, it's not even been reported. It's happened where he has recently pardoned the ex-president of Honduras, which they had a plan to then traffic over, I think, 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. And he pardoned him. The ex-president was, I think, serving a 45-year sentence in American jail, and they pardoned him completely. So you can start to question, like, is Trump's motive to actually end the drug war? Does he actually care about the drugs coming into America? Or is this to help establish a more favorable candidate in the politics of Venezuela, as well as Venezuela is a super rich country when it comes to natural gas and oil? And that's what this, if you really start to open up the read in between the lines and start to look deeper into what is going on here. If we look at Saudi, right, super rich in oil. We look at Venezuela, super rich in oil. You guys need to check out my short that I post either last week or 2 weeks ago about Nigeria, which he claimed they're saying that the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization, which and that they're killing Christians, which is a lie. They're killing both Christians and Muslims. And so, are they a terrorist organization? From my information, it seems so. However, the true issue and the true reason why to put American troops or to put American attention at least onto Nigeria is because of they're another rich country when it comes to oil deposits. And so you have Saudi making good business with them. You have Nigeria where you're trying to pressure them as well to politically speaking, and then also to then, scare them and fear tactics to have better trade negotiations when it comes to working with the US and having a better like hand over the market when it comes to the oil deposit and the oil supply that goes out into the market. And the same thing with Venezuela, right? You replace the government head with a head that you think is going to be more beneficial to your country, which even though it looks like he did win in a justifiable way, and that this current head has been he stole the election. It again, the true reason is for American energy. It's for the American economy. It's to have a better stronghold over the supply and price controls, so that we can see a dramatic push in the short term when it comes to getting out of this recession and going into a more successful economy. And that is kind of I'm trying to leave trail crumbs onto, why, all of these different things and what my thoughts are. But before we do that, we need to look at one more country, and that is Ukraine. So the cherry on top on this geopolitical cake assembled by the Trump administration is Ukraine. And it seems like we are really edging towards a peace deal. It seems like Ukraine has recently sent some of their national security strategists to the White House as of today to discuss, a plan that can be accepted on both sides for Ukrainian and Russian peace. And Russia, on the other hand, they're like, this is a good basis. This is like a good starting point, but this can't be exactly what will be the final form of this peace deal. And so to give you guys some points, we're gonna see from this peace deal, the last update that I saw was a reduction in military force by about 20%. We also saw some strategic land masses in the Ukraine, like the Donbas region, and some other regions that weren't even part of the war, being given up to the Russian to the Russian state, as well as that they won't be able to enter into NATO. I also believe that they'll be getting less funding as well, and then a few other things that were still it was like a 28-point plan that are still very important, but these are kind of the bigger points here, right? Is a smaller military, not being allowed to enter into NATO, and also giving up some key land parts, and key land masses. And so you got to be like, wow, this is a super, like, massive, like, this would be a massive victory for Russia overall, right? And this would be a huge loss for Europe, and this would be a huge loss for Ukraine, and potentially even a loss for the United States. There could be some deal that I believe there's even a side deal going on. This is more of an opinion. I believe I did some research, or I believe I found some stuff into this. I'll link it into the description down below if I can find it, or even I'll show an article right here. However, there could be another side deal where Russia and the United States make some level of agreement on what who's going to get allocated some of the natural resources, because again, that is the whole crux of what's truly going on here, right? So first of all, like, why did this Nord Stream, or why Freudian slip, but why did this Ukraine war happen? And so, first of all, there's this massive deal going on where Russia is going to have this Nord Stream pipeline where they're going to be directing oil to Germany. And through the CIA, and now even just as yesterday, Italy charged a Ukrainian man who was part of the blowing up of the Nord Stream pipeline. And so Russia was pissed. They're like, dude, this is going to be a massive deal, and it also is going to help Russia get integrated into the EU, the CIA, United States, and maybe even some of the central heads of the EU. We're not going to allow that to happen. And so that's step one, right? The next big step is it's from what it seems like Ukraine has over 26 trillion, estimated $26 trillion of natural resources, whether it's rare earth metals, whether it's coal, whether it's natural gas, but $26 trillion of natural resources in the entire region of Ukraine, which is huge, right? And so people don't care about this tiny rogue state. Obviously, Ukraine wants its own sovereignty. Obviously, Ukraine wants to be part of the NATO. Obviously, NATO wants to put in nuclear bombs on the border of Russia to keep Russia at bay. But the crux of the matter is that Ukraine has the natural water in Crimea, which Russia now owns, and has natural resources specifically in the Donbass region. There's this really big sliver of natural resources of rare earth metals, and right now, it seems like Russia is not only currently in control, but that is going to be the main bargaining piece when it comes to making a peace deal that no side wants to give up. And my belief is that if Russia does get this, they're going to kind of do some agreement with the United States. And so, because you can see, the United States doesn't care about Trump does not care about the EU. He doesn't care about EU success. He thinks the EU has been shafting the American economy and the American people of overpaying NATO, where the EU has not, where the European countries in the EU have not been paying as many countries, not been paying as much into funding into NATO, and so, and then also right, we have this massive contracts for BlackRock to then rebuild all of Ukraine, and so when it comes down to it, it's money, 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 money. It's all over, and there's just so much. It's not even about political identity. It's not even about land and motherland. It's all about who controls what resources and how can it benefit each own individual state, and almost like a 45D chess match. And so now let's look at this from the Trump perspective, and we'll analyze why is he doing this overall. So let's do a quick recap here. First, we have the ceasefire that happened in Gaza, even though it's been broken a few times, which it's not a true ceasefire. That was one of the promises in the Trump administration when going for re-election, or going for their second election, right? And then we have what's happening in Venezuela, where the true essence is that it's the pretext is drug trafficking, even though they're not primary drug trafficker in America. There's other South American states as well as China involved. The real reason is because they have large oil deposits. Same can go for Nigeria, even though that wasn't discussed in this episode. We can also say the same thing that's happening with in the Ukraine with their natural oil and coal and rare earth metals, as well as Saudi, where again they're one of the biggest suppliers of oil in the entire world with the petrodollar, right? And so why is corralling this all, and why is it all happening right now is the question. So if we look at American politics for several years now and several different midterms, we can see it's almost like right you're in final season and you're trying to push in all that extra credit right before the final exam so you can hopefully get a better grade. That's what's happening right now. We're seeing Trump really push in all of these things. We have Gaza, we have Ukraine peace deal, which he promised that it would end in 24 hours, which, I mean, dude, come on, it's almost been a full year. We have Saudi massive investments, we have Venezuela oil deposits, we have Nigeria oil deposits, all to really maximize a short-term boost into our economy right before the midterm election. And this is classic Republican Democratic strategy. I mean, this is a tale old as time, is that we see a really great boost during the halfway point, and then it kind of teeters off from there. And I'm not, and this is my opinion. I truly do believe that we can see Q1 and Q2 look very strong for the American economy. I believe we'll have prices go down. I believe that gas will go down. I believe we could potentially have more jobs because of investments coming in from tariffs. And it's also a massive distraction for what's happening on Epstein as well. So it's like, hey, look at the economy. I know, and it's like the Epstein thing is a Democratic hoax, and the so even though on one front we can be excited that there will be an economic boost happening here in the next few months, and the issue is that this is not a long term solution. Russia, in my belief, this will not be the end of their capitalistic, their colonialistic ways in the Ukraine, right? Because they definitely don't want any NATO intervention, and they definitely don't want. Um, they believe that the current president, Vladimir Zelensky, is an illegitimate government because they haven't even held an election in some time, as well as what's happening in Saudi. This is creating for a bigger business trifecta of the U.S., Russia, U.S., Saudi, and Israel, where they're going to be the big bullies in the Middle East, and again control the business and control the oil markets, um, and even probably usurp land as well. And so, but then again, in the long term, what could we expect? I expect that, like I was saying, Russia potentially even if we have a new administration comes in, one that's a little bit weaker, one that's potentially even democratic, because I don't even know. It seems like these countries don't respect our democratic leaders that much, especially what's happened with Biden. So we can potentially expect that once Trump is out of office, they're going to go back to their old ways, and it's going to be in the long term potentially detrimental because we are kind of bullying countries into the will of what our current president wants in terms of like getting these short-term economic wins without understanding that it's not creating true partnership, it's not creating lasting effects within one civilian lives being safe, as well as stronger economic ties that countries can be a little bit more of their own sovereigns. They can be their own, destined makers, and truly be a part of a more global economy. And so, again, I think there's something to be excited for in the short term. I don't. I'm very worried on what will happen in the long term, but I'm excited to hear what you guys think. Do you guys think that this will be great for America's future? Do you think this is going to be a long term lasting effect? You know, do you think that that Gaza will finally see a proper ceasefire? And do you think that we're gonna see less loss of life happening in the Ukraine, because it's been over like around 500,000 people, I think, on both sides. And so again, thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for my religious debates coming out, and I'll catch you guys in the future.